So today we're going to talk to Mark Schaefer about content marketing strategy in his book, The Content Code. I want to discuss his 6 success content marketing factors that will help you break through the overwhelming wall of noise. It's only getting worse. I'm even struggling in some cases where I thought last year was a little easier to break through the noise. Now it's like a scale of 10 harder. So Mark, very interested in what you have to say about that. So let's get started. I'm your host, Mark Fidelman, managing partner of Fanatics Media. And we're so excited to have Mark on the show today. As a reminder, we're more about how-to content, not the fluff. You can get fluff elsewhere. So please ask questions on the right-hand side with the /Q. Also tweet out the blab on the left-hand side. Subscribe to Mark. Give props when he's answering questions you like. And if you don't like them, just let him know in the comments. He's a big...
Give me props anyway.
So our guest today, Mark Schaefer, the author of The Tao of Twitter, Return on Influence, Born to Blog, Social Media Explained, and The Content Code is his latest book. Globally recognized educator, speaker, consultant, author. Geez. Well-known blog, businessgrow.com is one of my favorites and one of the most acclaimed marketing blogs of the world. This guy is amazing, especially you're writing a book a year now? How are you pulling that off?
Well, I didn't have a plan to do that, Mark. It's just when I hit, I'm a teacher basically. I think in my heart, everything that I do, I'm a teacher. And when I hit a big question that I can't really answer in a blog post, that's the foundation of the book. Basically, every book I write answers a big question that I'm hearing everywhere. And the question at the heart of the content code is, hey, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. I'm following all the content marketing rules. I'm building my audience and nothing seems to be working.
Yeah.
And so that's really the question of the book. And the premise of the book is that the reason things aren't working is because most people in marketing are in a mindset or they're following a rule that was true 2 or 3 years ago. Even 2 or 3 years ago, content was somewhat of a novelty, and it wasn't as difficult to break through. You were mentioning just before we got on the air here that it just seems like such a struggle today. Even month by month, it just seems harder and harder to break through. And I think the research supports that. I mean, every research report in the last year, more or less, has said content is going up, engagement is going down. And so that's the question. What do we do? How do you succeed in marketing in an overwhelmingly information dense world? And the key idea of the book is that content just isn't enough anymore. It used to be enough, but it's not enough. Building an audience isn't enough. The economic value of content is zero unless people see it and share it. We can get into this whole idea of social sharing a little bit more, but it's a very exciting idea. I think there's really compelling economics behind getting people to share your content. But what this suggests is, yes, you've got to have great content. Yes, you've got to build an audience. But you need to focus on this new competency of how do we get the content to move? How do we get the content to ignite? And that's what the 6 strategies of the book are about.
Okay, and Mark, we're going to get into those 6 pretty soon here. But before we do, what should people know about content marketing today? I thought I was pretty much an expert 2014, 2015. I'm like, okay, there's got to be something else that's working today, because what's working, like you said, even a few years ago, I'd say even last year, isn't as effective as it is now.
Well, I'll be honest with you, Mark. I mean, things are moving so quickly. I haven't completely figured it out yet. I know there's 2 big things that we need to grasp right now. The 2 big mega trends. Number one is information density, and I'm certain that the content code, the path that I laid out in the content code book is absolutely the right thing to do. It's thoroughly researched. It's documented. People are already applying it, and it's helping. It's working. But here's the other thing. On top of information density, these social media platforms are shifting in a way that's taking the attention away from us and our content and putting it on them. So specifically, Facebook, LinkedIn, they're becoming publishing houses now, right? So Facebook just announced they're going to open up instant articles for everybody. Now, the problem with that is the traditional inbound model, which would mean we've got content so great on our website, it attracts people like a magnet. And one of the ways we get people to be aware of our content is through links on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and these places. So we would put a link in and we'd get something back. We'd get a visit back maybe to our website. What's happening is these social media platforms are turning into cul-de-sacs. They're dead ends. They don't want our links anymore because that's taking people away from Facebook. They want the content. So we're going to have to adjust. I mean, we're going to have to submit to Facebook. We're not going to beat Facebook. So I think the traditional inbound model is really quite threatened by now by some of these trends. And we have to figure it out. We have to adjust. I think part of the answer is that branding is more important than ever. That if you use these platforms in a way now, not so much to try to get people back to your site, but to build a brand that people want to follow and engage with and maybe check your website. I think that's part of the answer to winning in this new world. And it's changing fast.
I mean, are there any new content marketing distribution strategies that you can deploy just broadly, or is it dependent on the social channel itself?
Well, there are a lot of different things that you can get into, but there's not a lot of real clear-cut answers. I mean, so as you know, I mean, you were one of the pioneers in the whole influence marketing space, right? Mm-hmm. And so this is something I started writing about in 2011. I wrote the first book on the subject in 2012, Return on Influence. So this has become mainstream because not everybody is having problems with organic reach. There are still very popular influencers out there. And if we can get them to distribute our content, become advocates, I mean, influence marketing is more important than ever, growing faster than ever. So that's something to watch. There's a tremendous amount of buzz about native advertising right now. I'm not a big fan. I think you're trying to trick a consumer. That never seems like a good strategy to me. But native advertising is another subtle form of distribution. When we put content into an editorial form where we can't really tell that it's an ad or that it's a promotion of some kind. But I mean, I think all of the distribution channels still have merit. I mean, Facebook still has merit, but we just have to look for new creative applications that are going to be able to draw attention.
Okay. So when you look at, kind of the strategies that people are using, it just seems like it's becoming more and more paid distribution, right? On Facebook, I mean, if you're not paying for it, the organic reach for us is going way down. So we really have to pay for it. Now, granted, Facebook probably has the best tools for reaching a target audience, especially it's very inexpensive to kind of test and experiment, but it's going more and more paid. Do you see that trend continuing, or do you still think even with influencers, you can have great organic reach?
Well, I think, I wrote this article in 2014. It's been more than 2 years now. This article came out called Content Shock. And the premise is that whenever you have too much of something, too much in an economic system, in a natural system, in a human system, if you have too much stuff, too much, water, too much food, or not enough, When the supply and demand changes dramatically, the system has to shift and adjust. And that's the same in business. So what's shifting a lot is the amount, the volume, the availability of content. So you would predict when the amount of content goes up, the cost to stand out is also going to go up, whether it's creating better and better content, whether it's advertising, promotion, distribution, paying advertisers. The cost of standing out is going up. It has to go up in some way. And it's predictable because, I mean, it's happened 3 times already. First was whenever you had websites. If you were the first one with a website, it was easy. Then when your competitors caught on, it was hard. If you were the first one to figure out SEO, it was easy. Then your competitors figured out those keywords became really difficult, expensive, competitive. It was hard. Same thing's happening now, Mark. If you were the first one to figure out social media and content, oh, happy day. But now everybody's figuring it out, and it's getting hard. It's getting more expensive, and we're challenged now to find new ways to cut through the noise to become the signal with our customers.
Don't you think it's going to turn into you as a person or you as a brand? You almost have to get to a Hollywood level film, video storytelling. I mean, it's going to get more and more challenging. So in order to cut through that noise, you've got to have a more compelling story. You've got to have higher production quality, and that's questionable in itself. But it seems to me like it's moving more and more towards who's the most creative, who's got the most reach in terms of what they've already established or the influencers they know. And if you can't compete with that, you're going to be left in the cold. And without paid media, it seems like it's going to be very challenging for those folks.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting analogy I've been thinking about is the world we're in now. It was almost like we're moving out of television in the 50s. I mean, I was reading about this. Television in the 50s was local. And they were looking for anybody with any kind of talent to come on and fill space. So you had local people doing music shows and cooking shows and political commentary, whatever. It was all kind of local. Then as television got more popular and advertising rates started going up, the expectation was for higher and higher and higher and higher quality. And but it's kind of like back in the local days, it's like the bloggers ruled, right? It was easy to get airspace. All you had to do was show up with your guitar. And then it became more and more competitive. The economics shifted. All of a sudden, the constraining factor back then was the airwaves, was the available bandwidth of the airwaves. We're trying to fit more and more and more into this finite little funnel, and so the quality goes up, the cost goes up, and that's what we're seeing today. I saw this interesting thing that I'm trying to remember who did the study, but people watch 17 channels. So what they did this study in the 70s when cable just started, and people basically flipped through their 17 favorite channels. Now on many cable networks, there's 500 channels, but people still only have the capacity to handle 17.
Yeah.
It's the same way in blogging today. It's the same way in our content world today, that you've got this explosion. You've got not just 500 channels, you've got 500 million channels. The people they're gonna pick 17. How are you going to become one of those 17? Difficult.
Very difficult. And I think that's the real crux of the matter is how do you become one of those 17 in not just a 500 channel universe, but a 5 million channel universe. And that to me seems to be a massive undertaking. And I'm glad there's people like you that are kind of leading the way, because even we who do a lot of content marketing for all of our clients, for ourselves, we struggle in some areas. We're always looking for the next best thing to kind of, make our clients and ourselves stand out more than everybody else. But I want to
get the content code book.
Yep, and that's what I want to get into.
Give it to somebody and say, do this.
So, Mark, now I want to get into the book because I'm very interested in this. What are the 6 success factors for content marketing in 2016? Now, people can buy the book to get real detailed information, but at a very high level, what are those 6? What should people be focused on?
Well, what we can do is we'll just go through each of them very quickly, and it's easy to remember.
Yep.
Because the acronym, the first letter of each of these spells badass. I literally created a badass strategy, which is the greatest achievement of my professional life. So badass. So the first one, we already kind of hinted at this, and this is the idea of branding. So first, let me take a step back. My view is that the economics of the web are not driven by content. It's not driven by publishing. It's driven by social sharing. When people share content, they become advocates. They're standing up in a virtual way and saying, I believe in this. I love this. And they read the content and they understand it before they share it. Research also shows that 70% of adult purchasing decisions are affected by what they see being shared on the web. Some people will listen to something shared by a stranger before they'll listen to your advertising or corporate marketing. So there's a lot of economic research that supports this idea of the power, the economic power, the strategic power of sharing. So what are the 6 ways we can get that content to share? Number 1 is branding. Sometimes people share content not because of the content, because they love the person or the brand that's creating it. It almost doesn't matter what they create. So that's why I was kind of hinting earlier at this idea that everybody has a personal brand, every company has a brand, but not everybody has a heroic brand that really transcends the content and the SEO. And I've got examples in the book of really crappy content that goes viral because somebody important said it. So the second one is A.
Well, Mark, before you go to number 2, I think for most people, it's like, okay, how do you create that hero brand? I mean, that seems to be a mystery within itself. I know you cover it in the book. Is there a few examples or a few tips that you can give people?
Well, here's the big one. I mean, actually what I did is I interviewed more than 50 people who are heroic brands. And I found 8 consistent themes. But here's the big one. It's trust. And I think too often today, Mark, we see people trading traffic for trust. They're focused on massive traffic. We want massive traffic to our blog or our website. And those people are tourists. And the people who are driving the economic value are what I call the alpha audience. Okay. This is the elite group of people that shares your content the most. They're the people who love you the most. And it's elite because typically it's less than 2% of your audience. So I think a very viable marketing strategy for 2016 is, do you know by name who shares your content the most? How do you reward them? How do you nurture them? And how do you turn that 2% into 3%? That's the strategy for 2016. So the next one is D. That stands for distribution, promotion, SEO. We talked a little bit about that. We talk about influence marketing in the book. I talk about it's an interesting chapter because I talk about the idea of distribution and SEO in the context of social sharing. And what I mean by that is that there's a lot of evidence right now. SEO is kind of going through a renaissance because all these big brands have they drank the Kool-Aid and they're making all this content and they're looking around saying nothing happening. 80% of our content never gets shared. 80% of our content never gets seen. What do? And their advertising agency partners are saying, oh, let's do SEO. It worked before. And the problem with SEO is you can trick people into clicking a link. You can't trick them into sharing. So there is a role for SEO, but if the economic value comes from sharing, you still have to do the work. There's no shortcut. So I address these tactics in the context of social sharing. So the next one is A, and that stands for authority. So let me give you a brief example of what I meant by that. I mentioned earlier, I wrote this article in 2014 called Content Shock. So this thing went viral. It was tweeted thousands and thousands of times. It had almost 1,400 comments. Even today, there have been, I've lost count. There's been over 1,000 blog posts written about this one blog post. Yesterday, I was looking at Twitter, and there was a panel discussion at a conference in Denmark called Content Shock. So this was a very, very popular piece. It was a very important piece. A couple weeks after I wrote it, I Googled Content Shock to see, what else is going on out there. And to my amazement, my original article was third in the Google list in the search results. How is that possible? How is that possible? There is no SEO for Content Shock. I made it up. I was the original article. I was the original author. And the reason I was third, I think I'm first now, but the reason I was third at that time was because the most powerful content didn't move. The most powerful website did. So websites like Copyblogger or Moz wrote about Content Shock. They referenced Content Shock, and they were ahead of me because they have greater site authority. So it's a subtle thing, but sometimes site authority can help you move content, even when you create great content. You may not win. So, okay, so now we got S.
But on the authority, just real briefly, how do you create? Do you have any tips? Are you talking about how you create authority? But do you have a quick tip for it?
Well, this is the most difficult chapter, obviously. The other five buckets. The thing I love about the content code is that it's accessible for everybody, whether you're a solo business or a multinational Fortune 500. There are tactics in the book you can use. There's easy stuff, free stuff. You can start today. Site authority is hard. Building site authority may take a lot of effort over years. So I bring in experts like Lee Odin to kind of teach us what does site authority mean today. But I also talk about strategies. If you don't have high site authority, what do you do in the meantime? How can you kind of go around that and get your content to ignite on sites that do have high site authority? So the next one is social proof and social signals. So the idea behind this is, in this world of information density, numbers matter. So if you Google something and you're looking at two articles about growing houseplants, and one has been shared on Facebook 2 times and the other one has been shared 250 times, which one will you read? 250. So in the absence of the truth, in this information dense world, people are paralyzed. So they want to find, they want to make the right decision. Who do I follow? Who do I trust? What do I read? So these numbers of social proof make a difference. So I talk about badges and social proof in the chapter. And then the last one is the shareability of your content. And this chapter is so big, I actually covered it in 2 chapters. And it talks about the psychology of sharing and the sociology of sharing, and lots of practical ideas to remove every obstacle and get your content to move. So it could be about the length of your content, that your headlines, the tone, just little tricks, and it's all backed up by data. I made sure, it wasn't like, hey, I polled my blog readers and I found out that they like this. This is like statistically valid, huge research projects that point you in the right direction of what can I do today? What are the little tweaks I can make to get my content to move today? So that's the badass strategy in 10 minutes.
And can you repeat what the acronym means one more time?
Yeah, B for branding, A for audience, D for distribution and promotion, A for authority, S for social proof, and then the last S is for shareability of your content.
Okay, great. And two more questions, Mark, before we sign off. You wrote one of my favorite books, which was A Return on Influence. For obvious reasons, we cover influencer marketing. It's still kind of the staple of what we do as an agency. Can you share with us how you would update the book today versus when you wrote it? I think it was in 2014.
Well, that's a really good question, Mark. And I have been writing some blog posts about it. I've got another one coming out tomorrow, as a matter of fact. I think one of the things that there's an opportunity. No one has really written a book that tells you how to do it, because it's more art than science, building these influencer relations, and 99% of the companies out there are doing it wrong. They're doing it incorrectly. And I do think that there's a methodology. So I think that's an opportunity for further exploration. Another thing that's quite interesting is that as influence marketing has gone mainstream, and it truly has, we're getting into that supply and demand thing again. So it's just like content shock. When there's a lot of demand and not very much supply, oh, happy day. Same thing with influencers. There's only so many influencers to go around. So if you were the first one to kind of align yourself with an influencer, great. But if you're late, there's only so many brands these people can really represent. So what we're seeing, you probably read about this, Mark, is that some of the big advertising agencies in New York are actually signing contracts with YouTube stars and Vine stars and Snapchat stars to say, we are representing them, almost like a talent agency.
Oh, yeah.
As an exclusive deal. And so now, no matter what brand you are, if you want access to this group of influencers, you got to go through the advertising agency. So again, supply and demand is beginning to impact influencer marketing in a very profound way. And once again, what happens? Lots of demand, limited supply, price goes up.
Yeah, and it's not just limited supply, which is true, but it's limited to what the influencer will do for that brand. I mean, if they sell out, so to speak, their brand is tarnished. So there's only so much they can do for a certain brand over amount of days or weeks or months without risking their reputation getting ruined. So that's another challenge we see. So there's not just limitation in the amount of influencers that are out there. It's a limitation of what they can do for you.
Exactly. And let me tell you a story, Mark. It's one of my favorite stories about how I was taken to school last year by this 19-year-old young lady. When I was at South by Southwest, I got to meet this young woman named Bethany Moda. And Bethany is a YouTube star. She was recently named one of the 30 most influential people on the web. So obviously, this is someone that big brands are going to love. So she has a contract now with the Aeropostale retail brand. She's also designing clothes for them. And when I met her down at South by Southwest, we were talking about good and bad experiences with brands as an influencer. And she said, well, I don't wear their clothes all the time. Why would I? Why would I do that? And I'm thinking, because they're paying you. And she said, I wore their clothes all the time. My audience would know something is wrong. And I just thought, you are so right. That you can never, it gets back to, we're going right back to where we started, Mark. Trust. Trust is what you need. Radical trust to break through the noise, to break through the clutter. And she knows that. She knows that she's not working on building an audience. She's not working on traffic. She's working on creating great content and doing it in a way that will never, ever breach the trust of her audience. And she wants to be congruent wherever she is, online, offline, on a video. She's the same person that people have come to love. And I think that's a lesson for all of us on both sides, the influencers and also the people who have expectations of working with influencers. Number one, it doesn't benefit anybody if we do something that breaks trust.
Yeah, I agree. And it's such a delicate balance, isn't it? I mean,
it is,
between representing brands and their own content. And I feel for these influencers as to how they make decisions about who to go with and who not to go with. What I tell them and what we advise them to do is if you genuinely have a passion about that particular brand or product, then it's okay to represent it. But if you don't, stay away from it, because in the long run, you're going to be your reputation is going to be tarnished.
I think that's good advice, Mark, because if you're not passionate about it, you don't believe it, it's going to show through. And if it shows through, people will know that you're not authentic and you're selling out. And I mean, this idea of authenticity, it's really an overused word, but I think what people want is truth. They want honesty. They want you to be honest about what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Okay, great point. So, Mark, the last question we have is, we do a lot of marketing hack videos and social hack videos. Do you have a marketing hack or social hack related to content marketing that you'd like to tell us that you do to get your content seen or to create content, anything that you like?
Sure. I'll tell you one that I just discovered, and I'll back up and challenge people watching today or watching in the future, that one of the reasons that I think companies and brands are suffering in this era of content shock, there's a number of different reasons, but one of them is we're getting into this malaise, this real almost laziness around blog posts look like blog posts, videos look like videos. And I'm kind of inspired by Taco Bell. Taco Bell only has 14 ingredients. They got peppers and lettuce and tomatoes and beef and whatever. 14 ingredients. But every freaking month they come up with something new with those Grand Chalupa del Grande, Gordita Royale, extra cheesy stuffed burritos or whatever, right? So they're just putting more cheese in. And it's a new product launch, right? So the point is, we have a lot of ingredients at our disposal, but we're not using them in innovative ways. We're just getting into this lazy kind of content marketing. So here's a hack that will give you an example. So did you know you could embed a video? You could embed this video in a SlideShare presentation. All right. So now, did you know you could distribute, we could start here on Blab. You could post this Blab on your blog, but you can also create a SlideShare presentation and talk a little bit about me, talk a little bit about you, write some of the highlights of our discussion, and then boom, you've got the YouTube, you upload it to YouTube and you got the YouTube video right in the SlideShare. I did this the other day with a Blab interview I did with Brian Solis, and the darn thing ended up on the front page of SlideShare.
Nice.
It got like 5,000 or 6,000 views in the first day with apps. I used, a standard template. I used a standard PowerPoint template. I'm embarrassed to say. It was something that comes, Microsoft Office, that was the extent of the design capability. Because it was an experiment. I'd never done that before. And boom, SlideShare's tweeting it out. Congratulations, you're on the front page of SlideShare today. Zero effort. So it's just using these ideas in different ways to find new audiences, to present content in ways that will excite people, that will inspire people, I think entertainment is a big word today. You and I, we like to share content because it amuses us. It inspires us, something we haven't seen before. And we have to think about our corporate content in the same way. If we want our corporate content to be shared, it's got to be entertaining in some ways. And that's a challenge because we normally don't sit around thinking, how can we be more entertaining today? But we have to. That's the era we're in today.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And by the way, Taco Bell introduced Cheetos into their latest. So they are very innovative, but now they're stuffing.
They had the Dorito flavored shells, which it's the same shell. They just put some dust on it. Now it's a Dorito Taco Del Grande or whatever.
And
they're winning awards for this stuff. And God bless them. That's fantastic.
I think the best thing about Taco Bell is their marketing and their social media marketing. It's off the charts good.
They've done amazing things.
I mean, I look at Red Bull and I look at Taco Bell as the innovators in this whole digital marketing space. They're both doing different things, but phenomenally successful. Yeah. Both of them.
Yeah.
Okay. Mark, any closing thoughts before we wrap things up? I thought this was a very good discussion. And speaking in which, we do embed this on YouTube. That's where most of our views come from. It also will go on Forbes. I'll write an article around it. Any closing thoughts before we sign off?
Well, just thank you so much, Mark. I mean, I appreciate you. I appreciate your support and friendship over the years. And you did a great job with the interview. It's a lot of fun for me when people push me in new directions and ask questions, well thought out questions. So thanks. Great job on the interview. This has been a lot of fun.
All right. Thanks, Mark. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thank you.